another table with her nose in a book. That was the other thing their observation of Pitter had yielded. The man was a reader. His evening meal was taken while reading. When he wasn't walking his patrol of the Pomerane, he was reading. He read while eating his other meal at sunrise, and for another hour before going to sleep at exactly 9 bells in the morning. Helen was reading, or pretending to read, The Shores of New Fenkel, the war novel that Pitter had been working on in the past 2 days of observation. She had balked at the idea of actually reading it herself. Had enough of schooling when I ditched school. You don't curl up with pennyhearts every night in your bed. You need to not be thinking about my bed and what happens there, Asti Rynax. So Asti had read it that morning and briefed her on it, or at least the 5 chapters. Enough so she could fake her way. It was a serviceable enough adventure book, set during the early days of the Island War, though it was based on fantastical ideas about a squadron of Druth soldiers holding against an entire Poasian company. Under normal circumstances, Asti would probably enjoy reading it, but this was a job. They had to get to Pitter. Pitter would get them the Pomerane would get them Holver and Associates. Holver and Associates would get them the client who had paid to burn down Holver Alley so they could force out the residents and buy up the land. Pitter came in, right on time, his book tucked under his arm. He sat down at the same table he always sat at, right in Asti's line of sight and right where Helen could move in on him. He gave a signal to the proprietor, who knew him well enough to simply nod back in reply. In a moment, Pitter's cider was delivered, and he was deep into his own copy of The Shores of New Fenkel. Alma Court came in a few steps behind Pitter, taking a place at a far table. His job was simple, at least this part. He had to follow Pitter from his apartment to the Gentle Shepherd and give signal if anything was wrong. Court ordered wine and bread, which meant everything was going fine. That gave Helen her cue. She reached from her seat over to Pitter's table. "I'm sorry," she said, talking through her nose. It was slightly painful to Asti's ears. Pilson hadn't given her much instruction on accents or voices, and she insisted on using one for this job. It was not in her skill set. "I couldn't help but notice." She held up her book to him. "Oh, yes," Pitter said. "How far are you?" "Chapter 5, she said. "You?" "9, he said. He was a bit standoffish, like he wanted to get back to his reading. Helen wasn't going to quite let that happen. She moved herself, book and cider, to his table and sat down. "I'm just loving it so far," she said, putting one hand on his arm. "I mean, it's the first one of this author that I've read, but it's thrilling." Pitter put his book down and locked eyes with Helen, which of course he would. Even in the dowdy disguise, she was a good-looking woman, and she had already shown a mutual interest. Now she just had to keep him. "I've been following this writer for a bit now," Pitter said. "He started out doing serials in, do you read the Sword Pulps?" "No," Helen said, "but I want to know about them." She scratched her ear to cue the next step. Mila was in place for that, watching through the window of the Gentle Shepherd from the street. Mila Kendish wasn't in disguise, other than wearing a similar laundry girl outfit. She came into the Shepherd and went straight for Helen and Pitter. "Cassie," she said to Helen. That was a name they chose when they worked out this bit. "What are you doing? You were supposed to come home an hour ago." "I'm having a perfectly lovely conversation with a fellow imaginative soul," Helen said. "This Steve?" Mila said, prodding at Pitter. "Who are you?" Pitter asked. "She's my baby sister," Helen said, "and she's annoying." "You shouldn't," Mila started, her hands giving a signal to Asti and Helen. She had Pitter's keys. "Go home yourself, Sarah," Helen said. "I'll get there when I get there." "Jerry won't." "Not your problem." "Fine." Mila rolled her eyes and stomped off. Perfect performance. "But I ain't gonna lie for you." She went out. "Ignore her," Helen said. "Tell me more about this writer's other work." Pitter launched into a description while his meal arrived. That and Helen should keep him suitably distracted while Mila ran the keys to Verci and Wynne Greenfield, sequestered in a back alley flop a block away. Wynne could make an imprint of the keys in a matter of minutes. That was all the easy part. Helen kept up her end of the conversation while